Okay, well, we will go ahead and call the meeting to order. If you're able, please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, roll call, Madam Clerk.
Mayor Pape,
Here.
Councilmember Shavetta. Here. Councilmember Hands. Here. Councilmember Caldwell. Here. Councilmember Leahy.
Here.
Councilmember Neal.
Here.
Councilmember Ryder.
Here.
Councilmember Silvers.
Here.
Councilmember Yodridge.
Here.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Okay, members of the public are encouraged to use this time to make comments about matters that do not appear on the agenda. Comments about items that are on the regular agenda will be taken up as each item is considered. Please note that individuals making public comments will be limited to 5 minutes. I had a blue sheet out in front that a lot of people have signed up on. So I guess at this point, if your item that you're wanting to speak to is on the agenda later, then we'll take it up at that time. Is there anybody out there that's wanting to speak to something else besides something that's on the agenda? Okay. Yes, sir. All right. If it's not on the agenda, please come forward, Mr. Lopez, and give your name and address for the record.
So I can face you, huh?
Yeah. Well, thank you.
My name is Angel Lopez III, live at 5538 Hayes Street here in Merriam, Kansas. I was a victim of a crime on August the 21st of 2021. And the first time I came into the courtroom here, I guess we'll call it a courtroom. We'll use it both as a courtroom and city council meeting. Thomas Pendleton was the attorney for the city. And the very first question after he called me to his podium over here was, "What's going on?" What a way to ask a question of a victim. What's going on? How do you answer something like that? I mean, maybe I should have took his chair and said, let me sit here and tell you what's going on if you don't know what's going on. But I was very polite to him and asked him, well, you're not being real specific in the question that you asked. So he really didn't ask much more of a question. From there on, the court dates came about, and December 1st came about, and the person didn't even show up for court that assaulted me. It was set for trial from December 1st of 2021, 22, I mean, and then 23, it was last Thursday, the 16th of February at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And Thomas came up to me and told me that we've struck a plea deal. Well, it's like, I didn't want a plea deal. You know, I really felt that she should pay for her crime, so I took it to trial. But Thomas didn't ever really say to me, well, if we take it to trial, there's a possibility that she could be found not guilty. Well, I took it to trial. Thomas never really explained that part to me, but I never even asked what the plea deal was. So we took it to trial, and I sat up there and I was sworn in to tell the truth, nothing but the truth. And I said, I do. And that's what I did. I answered the questions that Thomas asked me, and he showed one piece of evidence of where I got cut on my nose. And then her attorney took things and turned things around because he should have been sworn in to say, I do. I never saw him sworn in, which he should have probably been. But I answered his questions to the best of my ability. And I did plead the fifth a couple of times because I don't think that those were relevant questions that he was asking in regards to the assault that took place. when it was all said and done, she did not take the stand. The closing arguments were there, and the gentleman that's sitting right where you're sitting said not guilty. I should have took the plea deal, but I never asked what it was going to be. At least she pleaded guilty to something, but I didn't listen to the plea deal because I felt that we had enough evidence beyond the reasonable doubt to convict her and make her go to jail for a year. But Thomas is like, well, I've been here for 2.5 years and we've never done that. No. Okay, whatever. Let's make this be the first, just like that meeting that we had 2 weeks ago where it was a 4-4 tie and you got to be the lucky guy to make the decision, which I think you made the best decision possible, which was great. But anyway, I just kind of wanted to explain being a victim of a crime in Merriam, Kansas. People can get away with it.
Okay. Thanks, Mr. Lopez. I'm sorry that happened, and hopefully we've learned something. Excuse me. Is there anyone else that wants to come forward that is I know there's a lot on the list here that isn't on the agenda? Because there's, okay, come forward, sir. Okay. Did you sign in? Are you on the list here?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, state your name, sir, for the
My
record.
name is John Steeb. I live at 9613 West 51st Street. I had heard that at first we weren't going to do, Merriam wasn't going to do improvements on Merriam Drive. And then I heard that was rescinded. And I think it's a terrible idea. Number one, Shawnee did the same thing up at Johnson Drive in Neiman, and then they had to undo it, and I know
I
the,
don't want to interrupt you, sir, but that is going to be on the agenda this evening, so.
Oh, is it?
Yes,
Oh, I
yes.
am sorry.
It is, and so if you, we'll call you back forward at that time. That's okay. Thank you. Okay. All right. Anyone else? Okay. All right. We will be discussing the Merriam Drive project again here a little bit later in the council. Okay. Next item up are the consent agenda. All items listed under the heading are considered to be routine by the city council and may be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member so requests, in which case that item will be removed from the consent agenda and considered separate. Are there any council members that would like to have any item removed from the consent agenda? I'm seeing nobody raising their hand. I'd entertain a motion. Oh, this one. Okay, yes, Ms. Yadrich, go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, I move that the council approve consent agenda items 1 through 6.
Okay, we have a motion. Do I have a second? Okay, Ms. Hands.
I can second that.
Okay, we have a motion, second. Madam Clerk.
Councilmember Shavetta.
Aye.
Councilmember Hands.
Aye.
Councilmember Caldwell.
Aye.
Councilmember Leahy.
Aye.
Councilmember Neal.
Aye.
Councilmember Ryder.
Aye.
Councilmember Silvers.
Aye.
Councilmember Yodrich.
Aye.
Motion passes 8-0.
Okay, thank you, Madam Clerk. Okay, next item up would be the mayor's report. And the first thing on the list would be confirm the appointment of Sarah Limbacher to the Planning Commission for the term expiring December 31st, 2025. Is Sarah out there? Yes. Could you stand and just be recognized, Sarah? Okay, thank you. We appreciate you coming in, and we appreciate you volunteering for this, to be on this board. I don't know if anyone has any questions for Sarah. If anyone has any questions, I would entertain a motion to confirm her appointment. Okay. Ms. Ryder? Okay.
I move that the council confirm the appointment of Sarah Lambach to the Planning Commission for the term expiring December 31st, 2025.
Okay, we have a motion. Do I have a second? Ms. Shatters.
Mr. Mayor, I second.
Okay, we have a motion, second. Madam Clerk?
Councilmember Hands.
Aye.
Councilmember Caldwell.
Aye.
Councilmember Leahy.
Aye.
Councilmember Neal.
Aye.
Councilmember Ryder.
Aye.
Councilmember Silvers,
Aye.
Councilmember Yodridge,
Aye.
Councilmember Shavetta.
Aye.
Motion passes 8-0.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And thank you, sir, for volunteering for that. Confirm, the next item on the mayor's report is confirm the appointment of John Selisker to the Board of Structural Appeals, they called the BZA, for the term expiring December 31st, 2023. Is, John, are you out there? Yeah, yeah, John is standing back in the corner there. Yeah, thank you, John, for coming this evening and for volunteering for this board. Does anybody have any, no one has any questions for John at this point? I would entertain a motion for his appointment. Is it, okay, Ms. Shadrich.
Mr. Mayor, I move that the council confirm the appointment of John Selisker to the Board of the Structure Appeals for the term expiring December 31st, 2023.
Okay, we have a second? Go ahead, Ms. Shavetta.
Mr. Mayor, I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Madam Clerk?
Councilmember Caldwell,
Aye.
Councilmember Leahy,
Aye.
Councilmember Neal,
Aye.
Councilmember Ryder,
Aye.
Councilmember Silvers,
Aye.
Councilmember Yodridge,
Aye.
Councilmember Shavetta,
Aye.
Councilmember Hands.
Aye.
Motion passes 8-0.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And thank you, John, for stepping forward for that position. We appreciate that. Okay, next thing that I have on the mayor's report is, I'm sorry, just got a few more things. Sorry, Mr. Engel, I always make up my own list of stuff I forget to tell you about. But I like to keep him on his toes. Okay, just some things that's kind of gone on and some, what I consider some important stuff that's happening. I did attend the Greater Kansas City Mayor's prayer breakfast at Bartle Hall. Bobby Joe Reed, I don't know if anybody's familiar with that person or not, but she wrote a book, and she's actually been very instrumental over in Kansas City, Missouri, in reference to housing the homeless, those that are addicted, those on drugs or alcoholics. There's like 15 homes now that she's put together to try to address that situation that, you know, for those individuals, and has written a book, and it was very good. I've read the book, so if anyone would like to read it, please see me afterwards, and I will get that to you. So it talked about, she came from the streets and how she turned her life around, and basically now is helping a whole lot of other individuals. Very, very informative. And so, okay, another thing, attended the Northeast Johnson County Mayor's breakfast. Attended the Overland Park Fire Department Awards ceremony. A lot of great things were going on with the fire department over there. I saw Chief Diener over at this area. And I guess I can publicly announce, you have said it's official, okay. Chief Diener has submitted to the city administrator in Overland Park, and also has notified us that he's going to be retiring on April 1st. He says it's not an April Fool's joke. He said it's really true. And but we want to thank Chief Diener for all that he's done for the Overland Park Fire Department and for the residents of Merriam, and for providing our fire service here in Merriam for almost 10 years now that they've been providing that service. And he was instrumental in helping to make that happen. And we wish him luck and his wife luck in dealing with him and being home more. But anyway, I just want to acknowledge Chief Diener for all that he's done and what probably will continue to do as he goes forward with this new chapter in his life. So anyway, let's give him a round of hands. Okay, thank you. Okay, just for FYI, I did read the proclamation that we had last council meeting for the Merriam Christian Church's 110th anniversary. Amy Ryder was able to attend, and she was recognized at that event as well. We appreciate that, and they were very appreciative of our proclamation that we had. The next thing I have up on the list is, and this is a list that we've been working on for quite a while. As everyone knows, the 5701 used to be where the Irene B. French Community Center was located. Now we have a really nice community center up closer. But that vacant ground, we're trying to figure out what to do with that property. And of course, there were a lot of people on the previous committee that we've talked to and looked at those individuals to see who might be interested in staying. And then we've also had a lot of other individuals that have stepped up and said that they'd like to be part of a committee to figure out what to do with that property as well. So, we always appreciate all of our volunteers. And of course, the list itself couldn't, we can't have everybody because we want it to be, don't want it to be unwieldy. But I have established the list at this point of those individuals. We do have some of those I see out there in the audience, because we'd like to recognize you as well, too. So if I call your name, this would be the people that's going to be on the 5701 committee that's going to be coming up and trying to give some guidance and a steering committee, basically, to make recommendations and have public input as to what to do with that site. But so again, if your name is called, please stand to be recognized. Laura Sagan, Jacob Leahy, Stacy Chavetta, Larry Cisneros, Nita Dillon, Fred Tebenkamp, Sean Zotke, Brian Daly, Charis Phillips, Sarah Hall, Jack Sparks, Garrick Lair, and John Freeman. Okay. So other than, I said a couple council people that weren't paying attention here, but you didn't want to stand. We have 2 council people that are also ex officio members of that committee, but please thank these individuals for coming forward and volunteering. Thank you. You may be seated. Okay, so we have another committee that we're working on currently, but we're not going to name those individuals this evening because not everyone has been contacted in reference to our Public Arts Committee. So if you're interested in seeing who those individuals are, hopefully we'll be able to announce that at the next council meeting. All right, so I think that concludes my mayor's report, Mr. Engel. So next item, I guess you're going to take.
Next item on the agenda, thank you, Mayor, Council. The next item on the agenda is our Merriam Drive Street Improvement Project. This is a street improvement that's been in the budget for several years, from Johnson Drive to 55th Street. It was done in partnership with Johnson County, or at least it will be completed in partnership with Johnson County. It's a CARS project, so the county assisted road system pays for 50% of it. It's also been done in cooperation with Water One, in that they need to replace an aging main that exists underneath that street. And then the design, which came about through the Planning Sustainable Places grant, which was federal funds, it was administered through MARC, helped fund and make sure that the street design was attuned to our complete streets policy. It was multimodal, took into account more than just your regular vehicular traffic, but also took into account pedestrians, bikes, all of the above, to honor again our complete streets policy. So when we had a special council meeting on January 19th. Where we discussed this item. At the conclusion of that item, there was a consensus, an 8-0 vote to create a different rendering that would take the 3-lane profile to 58th Terrace. There was concerns voiced in that meeting about stacking, about the concern that when we have these convergence of events, meaning traffic, trains, accidents on the highway, buses, any of those things, when a variety of those things occur all at once, there was a concern that the stacking was not going to be sufficient with that design that had been presented that evening to contain all of that, to not make the situation markedly worse and become a detriment to the downtown businesses' success. So the council asked staff to design, or the design team to design a new rendering that was just to the south of 58th Terrace. On January 23rd, that design was presented to the council. There was, I think, good conversation, good deliberation about that. The public still had some concern about the stacking. There were, I think, in terms of safety, in terms of did they feel like people could get through that stacking when the stacking occurred. There was some concerns that were voiced about the unloading of vehicles in the middle of the street. And ultimately, I think there was a desire for some level of compromise to occur. We couldn't reach some sort of a compromise, so there was a vote to essentially just remove Hocker to Johnson Drive from the project. Essentially make that Merriam Drive project go from Hocker to the north to 55th, and that passed 5-4. As we went and started to work with the design team, we realized there were some issues that came about from that. They weren't insurmountable, but you've got your water main that exists under that street, so Water One still has to get to that. So to do nothing on that section of the street creates a little bit of a problem. We still have to marry up the stormwater system. We'd have to marry up the lights and the electricity. Again, none of those insurmountable, but it wasn't just an easy, hey, we can just draw a clean break here. So staff had voiced that. I think there was some also, desire to continue to find a compromise, to find a street design that where everyone could get something that they want in this process. And so there was a motion to rescind that was in accordance with governing body rules on February 13th, which essentially just nullified that vote to do nothing south of Hocker, which puts us back into an area of deliberation, because we don't have any direction. In preparation for this meeting, staff went back and looked at the minutes from the 23rd of January, and there were 2 additional street designs that were discussed at that meeting. We went ahead and had the design team produce those. Those were in your packet. We have them on the overhead if you'd like to take a look at those. So what we have is we currently have 4 designs that are in the packet. We have the original design. We have the design that was shared with the council on the 23rd, which is to 58 Terrace. Then we have 2 new designs, which maintain the 3-lane profile to the north of KC Strings parking lot. Again, these folks on the west side have parking lots behind their businesses, so to the north of one of those parking entrances. And then the final one that is in the packet is just the 3-lane profile that goes all the way to Hocker. It essentially takes that 3-lane profile another, I don't know, 100 foot, 120 foot, I'm not sure exactly what it is, to Hocker. So we would have a 3-lane profile that would run from Johnson all the way to Hocker. I don't have much to add past that, so I will turn it over to Mayor to carry this conversation forward.
Okay, does
happy to
anyone
bring-
have any questions for Mr. Engel at this point?
Can you bring those up,
Okay.
just in case anybody wants to look at them?
Looks like Mr. Dyer is probably going to bring up the
Just put one of them up here.
the renditions of what currently is anticipated to be potential solutions.
Can I ask a question while they're pulling that up? Our original vote to remove the section from Hawker to Johnson Drive would have meant no mill and overlay and no patch, no curb work. None of that would have been part of this project. And if we were to go forward with that, we would have had to pay 100% of the costs because it wouldn't have been a CARS project. Is that right? These two aren't paying attention.
Did you catch that, Mr. Engel?
Kind of. It was about our original vote to remove the stretch of road from Hawker to Johnson Drive. That would have meant no mill and overlay, no curbs, nothing to deal with patching back after Water One came through. And if we were to go back and patch any of that, that would have been 100% on our shoulders because it would have been removed from the CARS portion of the project. Is that correct?
Likely, yes. We might have been able to get some CARS dollars for the patching of the street, but likely we would.
Okay.
It's not really part of the project.
Yep. Okay.
Water One project, South Locker.
All right.
That answer your question?
Okay, I assume it'd be appropriate this time, Mr. Engel or attorney, to go ahead and, I have a number of people that want to speak to this project now from the public. I will call these names in order. Looks like Gary Raskin.
Just to confirm, though, are we having council discussion first, or public comments first? Confirming the order of procedure and everything?
Okay, which would be the preference?
So you can,
Right.
the chair can control discussion. I mean, if you want to take the, governing body-
I guess I was going to have them speak because it might lend to further discussion itself of the council after we hear from the public as
Okay.
to questions that might want
I
to be
was just
asked.
making sure. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, if we're not in any type of Robert's Rules of Orders procedure thing, I would call Mr. Raskin to the podium. Nope. You're going to defer? Okay, all right, thanks, sir. Okay. John Steeb, if you'd like to come back up, sir. Okay, well, we'll catch you this time. Go ahead. Name and address for the record again, please.
John Steve, 9613 West 51st Street. I have a problem with the new proposal, the downtown Merriam sign and so forth. The first thing I want to say is that what it tells the public is that it's a destination, that you need to go there, when in fact there's very few businesses that you would want to go that's a destination. I understand Casey Strings, and I've been in it, it's extremely packed, but the other businesses there, there's very few people. The other thing is Shawnee wants, and everybody's aware of at Neiman and Johnson Drive where they narrowed it, and it caused so much traffic congestion that Shawnee ended up went back. Now, they did get money to do it, but they spent the taxpayers' money to undo it. The other thing is I heard of bike lanes. Well, every day, but I want to say 99 out of 100 days, I walk the Turkey Creek Trail. And I live on 51st Street, and so I got to go through Brown Park, and of course I cross the street like many others. There's no street crossing there. It's dangerous. And I've seen many, many people almost hit on their bicycles trying to cross. They go over to the waterfall park and so forth around. There are many areas in Merriam that we do need to address. I don't feel like this is a wise, even if half the money is given to us to spend, well, it doesn't make sense to spend it on this. And it just seems like there'll just be a lot of traffic congestion here. A lot of the businesses, they won't have parking anymore, or very little parking. And I know that some of that's been addressed, but the people that are there that I've talked to, the business owners are very worried about the parking. And, and I understand that, there really isn't a whole lot of businesses that people would travel to, but the road is well-traveled. So, that's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Steen. Okay, and we've spoke with Mr. Lopez already. Lisa Feingold will be next on the list. Please come forward and give your name and address for the record. And you have 5 minutes.
My name is Lisa Feingold. I live at 9609 West 53rd Street. I've lived in Merriam for 17 years now. I run about 1,400 miles a year, all mostly in Merriam, a little bit in Shawnee, so I use all of the trails. We shop locally when we can. My husband and I do walk to the Merriam Marketplace. We go to Merriam Drive Live. I volunteered at the car show. We have patronized the first Anita's and the second Anita's, and we will keep going to however many Anitas there are. We go to Genesis. We now shop at the Sunflower Market. My husband gets all the ladies in his exercise class to go get T-shirts. We go to What's Up. We've been to Bilski's. Now we go to Blondie's. And I have checked with every survey that I have filled out, and I took copies of them, the paper ones, and from what I have understand, I've looked at the comprehensive plan online, follow the city council, and for the most part, I don't really need to come here and say anything, because as things run, if they should, I don't really have to, but I am. I checked with the survey results to make sure that what I'm thinking, that I'm in the majority of other people who live in Merriam, which I am. Looking at the survey results, the things that people are most interested in Merriam, or most important objectives, are having livable neighborhoods, ensuring Merriam is a place that supports aging in place with adequate services and infrastructure for older adults. I myself am aging, and I plan on hopefully aging a lot more, and I would like to continue aging in Merriam. So that is also me. And to maintain a low level of environmental pollution. Bike lanes and things are farther down there, and in some of the reports, 61% of people wanted more bike lanes. And I agree with that, and I've looked at the preferred bike lanes and also agree with you need a buffer and you need a barrier, because I think, as someone mentioned before, they were hit on a bike in a bike lane, and unless you have something there to protect them, you might as well not have it at all. I also have a cello player. I've parked in front of Casey Strings many a time. I've parked in the back many a time, and depending on what time of year it is, and if it's the beginning of the year when you're getting your instruments, people are not nice and they will not let you out. So if you do get rid of their parking, I hope that you consider putting some sort of sign, turn, signal, something there, because it's a nightmare. And if you do have a small person with a cello, it's a bigger nightmare. Mostly what I do want to point out and why I'm really here, besides all those other things which are relevant, and also I hated the Shawnee cut down. I work at Hawker Grove. It was horrible. And I have to drive through Shawnee to get to the grocery store. So it was kind of a pain. Anyway, so on my notes, and I was looking at why this bothers me so much about the 2 lanes. It's a transparency issue, and I'm glad that somebody did fix it, but I feel like there's a piece online about the Merriam Drive project. Like I said, I follow online a lot. And I took a screenshot of it in my notes, and I went back and found the screenshot, and this is what appeared on the Merriam website about the Merriam Drive project that you're speaking about up until, this was still like this at 11:30 last night. It says the city received 2 grants from the Mid-America Regional Council in early 2021 to study bike, pedestrian, and vehicle travel on Merriam Drive. You know what the rest says. After feedback from residents, business owners, and community leaders, concept plans for a new street design include, and the first item is, after feedback from residents, business owners, and community leaders, concept plans for a new street design include, saying it again, changing the road from 2, 3, and 4 lanes to 3 lanes throughout.
You need to wrap up really quick, Ms.
Yep,
Funkel. You got
that's
5
it.
seconds. Oh, okay.
That's it. So I made some calls today to make sure I wasn't crazy, and now it's fixed. So
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you for coming forward and speaking this evening. Okay, looks like John Canterbury is the next one on the list. Mr. Canterbury, please give your name and address for the record.
I've done this once or twice.
Yeah, I think you probably know the procedure, don't you?
I am John Canterbury, 4901 Wed Street, Merriam, Kansas. I've lived in Merriam since 2007 and served 4 years as a Ward 1 City Councilman. I frequently drive on Merriam Drive and park often at 5848 Merriam Drive, home of Dan Leap and his guitar lamp business. Dan and I have played together in the band Pompous Jack since 2008. So I'm very familiar with the parking, traffic issues, and flows on Johnson Drive at Merriam Drive. I strongly disagree with any road plan that would eliminate any parking lanes or any turning lanes or parking on Merriam Drive, especially in that area. We thought this issue had been put to rest previously with the council's 4-4 vote and the mayor voting in favor of leaving Merriam alone, drive alone between Hawker and Johnson Drive. Then we found out that several of you have reneged on that decision without giving me any public notice that was to be discussed or voted on. Bringing it up under new business was also fraudulent, sneaky, and deceitful in the public's perception. The Merriam Drive businesses and residents have let the council know that they want the road profile to remain as it currently is between Johnson Drive and Hawker, keeping the right lane, turn lane onto Johnson Drive in front of the Guitar Lamp building. It seems like the council is somewhat ignoring the residents' wishes and the business wishes. If the businesses want to know why they're ignoring them, It's because if you look at their long-range plan, your business is not in that plan. They don't want car lots and stuff. They have a grander plan. So if your business is one of those, you're not in the plan. That's why you're not mentioned. Dan Leap has asked me to say and bring up, he's out of town tonight, and gave me one paragraph to read if I can. He asked me to say that he also supports his neighboring businesses, wishes that the road profile stay the same. This has come up in the last meeting. Your own Merriam Visitors Bureau gives tours frequently of the guitar lamp shop, Dan's business, and guitar strings, Casey Strings next door. There's no place for your Parks Department's 45-foot bus to park and unload residents safely if you remove that right-hand lane. Moving the parking to the east would not accommodate this. It would be dangerous and not beneficial to your own program. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kennemer. All right, it looks like Sarah Rozo is the next person up. Sarah, please come forward. Again, your name and address for the record.
I'm Sarah Orozco, 5847 Merriam Drive. I'm the owner of the Sunflower Market. A little anxiety here, sorry.
Take your time, you're good.
I just wanted to give, I opened my store at that location March 26th of last year. So I'm the new kid to the area of those businesses. Just some observations that I've made. I'm right there at the end, so that turning lane, I see it get backed up when buses return, when buses leave in the morning, lunchtime, the line backs all the way back up to Hawker. It's not just that 5 o'clock rush hour, so I don't think going down to 2 lanes at all would help. I mean, it's always gets backed up. Also, I live down off of County Line and Merriam Drive, where several years ago they repaved it, they put in bike lanes. They promised those businesses down there that it would bring in more business with the bike lanes, although it didn't take away from any traffic lanes. But Dan Leap spoke to the owner of Peddler's Daughter, and she is, in the several years that has been done, has had one person come in on a bicycle and buy anything from her. One of the things that I hear from my customers is, I was driving by and I saw your business and I decided to stop in and see what you have. I have not had any customers on a bicycle, and the only people that come in on foot have been the homeless people in the area. And I usually have to escort them out. I'm sorry. Overall, it's not a good idea to go down to 2 lanes, because as someone mentioned in the meeting on January 19th, that if it gets too backed up, people will stay away from that area. If you stay away from that area, that takes away from eyes on my business, new customers, potential customers, for not just me, Casey Strings, the barber shop, Blondie's, and things like that. So that really helps us prove our point there.
All right, thank you for coming forward and speaking. Okay. Okay, next person up would be Julie Clark. Name and address for the record.
My name is Julie Clark, and I live at 5612 Hayes Street in Merriam. I am both a resident and business owner of 18 years, 22 years living here. I travel Merriam Drive on a regular basis, as do my clients. I would love to address the entire project, but since our focus tonight is on the section of Merriam Drive from Hawker to Johnson Drive, I'll discuss my concerns for this area only. My opinions are based on personal experience as well as having read all 234 pages of the agenda packet, 163 of which pertaining to Merriam Drive. Your planned improvements are so flawed, and the planned arch is ridiculous. Over the past few weeks, I've shown your rendering to my clients, and not one had anything positive to say. Many asked if it was a joke. I wish it were. My biggest issue is the loss of the right turn lane to accommodate it. The fact that you are willing to disrupt traffic for it is senseless. The cars that were previously able to turn right are now stuck in a long line of cars. The cars going straight will be slowed by the cars making the turn. People will be sitting through 2, 3, or more signal cycles. The family-friendly shopping destination you are hoping downtown Merriam to be can't happen with the used car lots and auto repair shops dominating the area. How are you going to get the shopping district you want? Condemn these properties? Oh, right, of course you are. I would suggest holding off putting any kind of marker until there is something worthwhile to mark. Number 2, moving this on-street parking from the west side to the east side. The idea of a kid crossing Merriam Drive carrying a cello makes me absolutely cringe, crosswalk or not. There is plenty of off-street parking on the east side. Taking out the west side parking would cause a safety issue where there was none before. Number 3, getting rid of the center turn lane. I cannot express enough what an ignorant mistake this is. So many vehicles use this lane that if you took it out, it would constantly bog down traffic. At the past 2 meetings, it was mentioned putting up cones to create the traffic patterns in your plan, yet it still hasn't been done. These sim projections are guesses at best. The cones would at least be closer to a real-life scenario. Every car making a left turn will hold up traffic, especially waiting for oncoming traffic to pass. The car carriers that use the center lane to offload the cars will now be holding up one lane of traffic for 20 minutes. People then would risk head-on collisions trying to pass, and you know they will. You will be creating a much more dangerous situation. I'm also curious to know why you don't look at what other cities have done and how it worked out. Shawnee is right next door. They tried it and it failed miserably. Why shouldn't we avoid the expenses they incurred to fix it by not doing it in the first place? My recommendation is to do the necessary storm drain and water main upgrades and mill and overlay on Merriam Drive from Johnson Drive to Antioch, but change nothing pertaining to the layout of the street itself. There are many ways to beautify the area without the outrageous expense and added safety issues. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Clark. Next person up would be David Miller. Name and address. Thank you.
David Miller, 5605 Hayes Street. My biggest concern would be first responders. If they got some kind of incident going, it's going to delay the time. They'll probably have to take an alternate route, delay the response time by 2-3 minutes. Somebody's life's in danger. That could matter life or death situation. I mean, it'd be so clustered in there, they probably would put it in protocol to, rush hour times to go an alternate route just because they wouldn't be able to get through there. I mean, the quicker they can get to somebody, the better off they are, obviously. So that's all I really have.
Thank you, Mr. Miller.
Thank you.
All right, well, that concludes the individuals that I have currently listed. Is there, okay, I see more hands. When that's fine, please come forward, and yeah, we'll catch everybody. Thank you. Name and address for the record. Ms. Gurgel.
Kathleen Stahl, 10208 West 54th Street. And first of all, I like the center turn lane. I think it works well, especially if you have a big truck with cars. But the main thing I wanted to come and talk and mention was that I read about the Truman Road over in Kansas City, Missouri, and their bike lanes, and the businesses felt like they hadn't been consulted at all. And also, we struggled with what Shawnee did, and we're so happy when they went back. And I travel Merriam Drive all the time, but mainly I think that we should be strongly considering what the businesses want to do, because we sure don't want to do something and then have to turn around and fix it later. That's just a silly thing to do. So I'm just here to support that we are really considering how the businesses feel about it. That's all.
Thank you, Ms. Stahl. Okay, and then there was a couple more hands. Okay. Okay, we'll go ahead. We'll start over here. Go ahead. Please come forward, sir. And yeah, thanks, Mr. Stoll. Name and address for the record.
My name's William Stoll, and I live at 10208 West 54th Street on Merriam, Kansas. I have been watching here, and I haven't noticed anybody come up in favor of this change. I also don't know who all got to see the last drawings that were made up. As far as having a bicycle trail, I've been riding the trail here since it was put in. I've lived here for right at 40 years. From Merriam Lane, there's no further than an 1/8 mile to a bicycle trail in Merriam. To go completely through Merriam, you can cross at 55th Street with a walk light that has a button. And my curiosity on some things were, why, if we need utility work, water work especially, underneath Merriam, why hasn't it been done? Why are we waiting? Why did it take to wait until we're going to put a street in, and now we decide that we deserve the utilities to be proper and our rates be proper because of that? And again, the businesses, I'm a gearhead, I'll admit it, but I've been coming back and forth through Merriam since it was brick and dirt. And I don't believe that our houses would cover the taxes to put us where we're at right now if we close those car businesses down. They have to be able to find some way to exist in order for Merriam to exist, because you're not going to get small businesses that are profitable, at good profit, on Merriam Lane. It's not, the street is not big enough. There's not a room for a grocery store. We need to look other places for those. And I would really like to see the new drawings before the vote goes in. I didn't know that there was a new set of drawings and have been even drawn yet for another plan around. And I think there's probably a lot of other people in Merriam that would like to see those drawings besides the council, no offense. But there's probably a lot of residents that wouldn't mind seeing the drawings. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Stoll. Just for the record, so people do know, the water lines are not owned by the city. Those are owned by Water One of Johnson County. So we don't have a whole lot of control on those water lines, and they break, they patch them. But we work with them, and obviously this was a really good time to replace those as we're redoing the streets. But water lines are not owned by the city. Okay, now there's more hands. We're gonna get there, but I promise. Okay, and also I want to make sure I don't call somebody twice, because we're only allowing one time at your 5 minutes to come up. So if you've previously spoken, please do not raise your hand again. Okay. So now with that, other people. Okay, go ahead right here. Okay.
Good evening. I'm Rose Geringer. I live at 9931 West 56th Street for 23 years. When I was a kid growing up, I lived in Shawnee, just a mile west of the house I live in now. And Merriam was bikeable in the 70s. My friends and I would bike over here because the streets in Shawnee were very perpendicular, and we liked to come over to the curvy, windy cul-de-sac streets over in Merriam. So I don't think that the Mid-America Regional Council, this mark that everybody talks about that gets to pull all the strings and tell us what to do, really, they're behind the times, and we don't have to kowtow to whatever they desire. So I really would like to see some of our smaller municipalities stand up to Mark and say, we're going to do things our way. We're going to support our businesses. We're going to support our residents. We're going to spend our tax money wisely. They're really forcing the Mid-America Regional Councils, forcing an urban footprint on a very suburban lifestyle. And most of us live moved here so that we could have a yard, so our kids had somewhere to play, so they weren't in the streets or in bike lanes. And if you want to spray paint bikes on the street, that's not going to make it any safer. They're still supposed to follow the rules and regulations, not impede traffic flow, and virtue signaling by painting bikes on streets is not a good use of our time and resources, for sure. The council should not be picking winners and losers either over our businesses and which ones might be able to have foot traffic or pedal traffic, per se. They can go in and buy a quart of motor oil over at CarQuest or something, but you can't put a cello on a bicycle. And if you expect to, minimize all that parking and have them park down at Merriam Christian Church, that's a big empty lot. You're going to have to cross all that traffic to get across. We just really have to think about supporting our businesses that are underpinning so much of our economic development here in the town of Merriam. So we've got these longtime businesses that have invested in our city. They are a big part of our tax base. And we've got Mark, who says, nope, you need bicycle lanes. You need to pave everything and no more green space because we need upper middle class white people on their bike clubs to be able to, drive through your downtown and not have to use the streamway trails. I mean, is that really our priority? Are the bike clubs that I understand were here at the end of January? So we know that Shawnee has been brought up several times, and they were smart enough not to put in curbs and concrete. All they had to do was change the striping on the streets, and they were back to where they were. Their citizens were happy, and traffic flowed. In Mission, they have not gotten rid of lanes down there. When they redid their downtown, there's still 4 lanes of traffic all the way through there, and they've done a fantastic job of revitalizing their downtown without, cramping off the traffic flow. So I think that we, go ahead and do things differently. Don't march to Mark's drumbeat. Do things the way that it fits for Merriam. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Geringer. Okay, now, I think there's in the back, the very back, sorry, and then I'm going to get to you. Okay. Okay, name and address for the record, sir.
I'm Rick Williams, RC Williams Company, 9214 West 58th Terrace, 36 years in town here as various sundry businesses. And I'm the Downtown Merriam Partnership President. As you know, I've kind of been resisting what's been going on, and there's a good reason, and a lot of people have been talking about those good reasons. And they tell us if you see something, say something, and so I see some stuff going on. It's really kind of unfortunate, will be a problem, and I'm not a great prognosticator, but I do keep my eyes open. I do pay attention to what goes on, how people behave, how other things go. Early in my life, I was a social worker, and I have a degree in sociology with a lot of anthropology and various other things, psych and all junk that went with it, and spent 10 years in social work with lots of in-service training. So observing people is something that I have been pretty good at. And I've done a lot of other things in business too. So I learn, I look, I listen, and I try and communicate that to you. And I'm seeing problems with this. This particular print was the one that Chris sent me, and it basically is going to exacerbate the problem at the turn-in to Casey Strings if they have no more parking in front, because it's going to create a traffic problem right there at that turn-in, right at the end of the, actually right at just before Dave Carroll's garage that goes through the middle of their 4 buildings. Then the other thing I want to point out is that what you're talking about doing, in my opinion, of the area between 5701 and the Merriam Marketplace is going to be tantamount to creating a kill zone in there, because you're going to scrunch everything down for a very short period of time and add diagonal parking where cars will be pulling in and out of those parking spaces. If you want to do smart thing, put the diagonal parking around the backside of 5701 and do the changes before you screw everything up, please. It just really does not bode well if we don't pay attention to the realities of the traffic down there, and no businesses can be really started on the development until the flood abatement is completed anyway. So it's all cart before a horse on some of the thinking that's going on here. It would be wiser it'll be easier to modify things once you can get the development started and have a chance of actually getting somewhere. But as long as the flood insurance is as high as it is down in that area, that most people can't afford it, even myself among those, you're not going to get big money spent in what I think can and should be beautiful downtown Merriam. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Okay, go ahead. I know you've had your hand up a lot. Please come forward, name and address.
Hi, my name is Mallory Paddock. I live at 5723 Woodward Street. I made some notes, but after hearing everybody else talk, I don't know, it's like informed a lot of things. I've heard from a lot of people that are business owners. I've heard a lot of people who are patrons. I happen to be a student at Casey Strings. I do rely on that parking out in front of Casey Strings. I use it every week. I'm using it tomorrow night. I didn't know about the parking lot behind, and I have to agree, it is tiny, and people's doors will bang into each other's doors. I have used parking across Merriam Drive. You do have to use a crosswalk. I have a violin. I don't have a cello to carry across a crosswalk, but I do understand we don't want children crossing that street. I'm glad that this packet was here. I didn't know about any of the call-outs and the details and everything. I'm a firm believer in, I'm a firm believer in a lot of things. I'm a firm believer in small communities. We have a small space between a creek and a railroad track. We have the space that we can deal with. We can't make it bigger. We can't make it smaller. We can do with it what we can do with it. I think that small communities, it's the reason I moved back to Merriam. I love Merriam Drive. I love the potential of Merriam Drive. I come up with thousands of business ideas every day that I know that I can't enact. I'm excited for the future of it. I'm excited for the 2040 project. I don't think that this area is our primary concern. I think that the board you're putting together for the previous community center lot, great idea. We have lots of blank spaces along Merriam Drive further down that I think require more attention, that help bolster new business in that area. I think this particular area is actually starting to do rather well. I moved back right before 2020, and I've seen so much improvement throughout throughout COVID to this particular block. Regarding bike lanes, I am a biker. I commute. I don't commute for my violin lesson, but I do commute to local businesses when weather is good from the east side of Antioch. And I would say regarding bike lanes, your primary concern is on Johnson Drive. It is not on Merriam Drive. I do agree the Streamway Trail is there. It's useful. I do agree bike lanes are a good thing, but they don't necessarily make drivers safer or bikers safer. They just put a denotation there. That's more of a cultural shift. That's more of a community shift and an outlook shift. It takes time. You can't just paint them and then things will change. Everybody said so many wonderful things tonight that I don't know a lot about. I will say I think my primary concern for any improvements is that I think historic preservation should come first in every aspect. This is a century-old, more than a century-old area. And I see things happening on Merriam Drive. Businesses are great, but there are also businesses who I think are taking advantage of buildings, and there are other things to be concerned about. Parking is working the way that it is. That's my opinion. I don't know who approved for the company to paint the historic schoolhouse black, but that's a travesty. The end.
Thanks, Ms. Pettit. Okay, let's see. I think there was somebody else out there, wasn't there? Am I missing someone? Okay, yeah, go ahead. Please come forward, sir, and give your name and address for the record.
Dave Carroll, actually 5810, 5836, 5837, and 9204 West 58th. So as you can tell, the area that you're dreaming of is, I have several businesses and personal property there. Not going to beat the dead horse. I've been there since I've been 13 years old. I've seen a lot. Parking is what it is. It's always a problem, and it always will be a problem. Granted, I would love to have the parking on my side of the street again. True Auto Parts is my main business. But that being said, it's been gone for 15 years. I've accepted it. We work around it. It's okay. Try, guys, to leave it alone, okay? I can't say that it's up to me, but I only know 2 of you on the council. Mr. Mayor's been the only one in to talk to me. Chris, I haven't seen you for years, but it's good to see you again. The rest of you, I don't even know who you are. So we appreciate everything that you do, but again, you should probably listen to some of the businesses, because is anybody up there a business owner in Merriam? How about back here? Business owners? Okay. Try to listen, okay? That's all I can say. Thank you very much. I appreciate everything you guys do.
Thank you, Mr. Carroll. Okay, go ahead, please come forward, sir. Name and address for the record. Mr. Crone.
Good evening, Council. Billy Crone, 6633 White Street. I'll pick up that for you when I get done. Our city administrator admitted clearly in previous meetings that maintaining good traffic flow was not prioritized in the recent plans to change Merriam Drive's configuration. How that monumental oversight hasn't gotten more attention is beyond me. And somehow, I'm not surprised that the street plan in the year 2023 forgot about cars. Cutting out turn lanes and on-street parking would directly congest traffic. And I think that's the point. Road diet, a political buzzword that I've heard thrown about here and elsewhere, rubs me the wrong way. I shouldn't have to say this out loud, but the road is for cars. Bicycles are welcome to use it within the law, but they can use the sidewalk and trail just as easily. That's my preference when I bicycle in Merriam, as I have for years. With all the talk about bicycles, I'd encourage you to look outside after this meeting. I didn't see any bicycles tonight when I came in. I didn't see any last month either, when cyclists came up to this, supposed cyclists came up here and spoke about how important cycling is to champion bicycle centricity. And what great weather we have tonight for bicycling, but yet none to be seen. So let's be real, we don't bicycle everywhere in Kansas City. This is a car town. Our city, Merriam, is a car town, and that's okay. Kansas City, Missouri spent millions to create dangerous, unusable nightmares with Truman Road. North Kansas City with Armour Road, it's even more complex, thank God it's shorter. And both times it was done in the name of bicycle centricity. Others here tonight have pointed out Neiman. Let's learn from our neighbors on this, please. Road diets are virtue signaling, let's be honest. So I'll offer my own buzzword for you. Stop with your road shaming already. Stop shaming your community for its roads. Don't take away 1 inch from Merriam Drive. I propose this: leave the current profile alone south of Kessler. Keep each lane in each parking spot where it is. And yes, I caught that you haven't spoken a whole bunch about the right turn lane, but that's been absent in some of the plans. Don't take that away either, please. That has an important purpose. Leave the current profile as it is. Go ahead and do a mill and overlay if you want to freshen up the materials. That's fine. Make it match. I don't think anyone really objects to that. Bringing up the CARS funding probably going away was something that was kind of new, and I think more people should have known about that earlier in the process, that was contingent, that would have gone away when that section was taken out. But, you know, I just would say leave it as it is. The mill and overlay isn't going to hurt anything. Leave it untouched south of Kessler. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Crum. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Dyer. In the back, sir. Okay. Thank you, sir. Name and address.
Anton Kreutz, KC Strings, 5842 Merriam Drive. On February 1st, I sent an email to all the council members about a meeting I had with Whitney the week before. Here's an excerpt from that email. Quote, "We came to a compromise that Whitney is looking into with the engineers about whether a new configuration for the third middle lane to be extended just past the main alley entry to the west side businesses, and the 5 parking spots can be left on the west side. The east side already has 22 parking spots on the 58 terrace. This new configuration south of Merriam Drive would then integrate into the approved configuration of Merriam Drive north of Hocker Drive," unquote. If any communication was offered to the council that I had agreed with any other plan that, other than what I'd outlined in my email, then that is false. Furthermore, I was also taken aback in my conversations with Whitney at the meeting when she implied that I need to accept a compromise site that she was offering, or otherwise she told me that Merriam may postpone the road repair downtown for 7 years, and downtown Merriam could end up with a gravel road in areas at some point, and that the city would buy and tear down a garage building owned by Dave Carroll and leave a vacant lot there in between the buildings occupied by my business. Then telling me that as a result, downtown Merriam would end up being a place where I would not want to do business in. This type of heavy-handed pressure is clearly unprincipled and uncalled for. As a result, only one of the proposed plans tonight has the beneficial designated middle lane that goes all the way back to Hocker to prevent the traffic congestion that everyone here is talking about. All the plans have the west side on-street parking, which has been there for 30 years, removed. The businesses on the west side are against this, and if voted on tonight, it would seem like a clear move by city against the west side businesses for urgently speaking out against the traffic congestion. Add this issue to the questionable open meetings issue, and I feel we have a situation where any significant road change in downtown Merriam Drive would be fruit of a poison tree. My suggestion is that the city does, as has been suggested several times, a simple mill and overlay of this existing streetscape and not a radical rework of the street as is being proposed in the plans tonight. I spoke with Brian Dyer and city engineer Randy Gordon this afternoon. They confirmed this plan of simple mill and overlay can be accommodated and will work fine with the already approved Merriam Drive remodeled north of Hocker Drive. Randy also confirmed that if the short right turn lane is removed, then the existing streetscape that is left will allow for a downtown Merriam sign to be put up in front. This is contentious with people, and maybe with the engineers can do it with the right turn lane or not, but that's up to them. Either way, I'm all for moving Merriam forward. I'm all for revitalization, and I'm all for making straightforward street improvements with the mill and overlay to build a downtown Merriam that we can promote to the rest of the world. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Kreutz. Okay, please come forward, sir. Name and address for the record.
How do you do, Mayor, Council, and my fellow residents? I'm Christopher Leach. I live at 8600 West 60th Street in Merriam. For 20 years, one of the first things I did in Merriam was come to a city council meeting to object to a proposed zoning change. And I was really grateful for the opportunity to come before my elected representatives and speak my mind. And I really admire my fellow citizens who share their passion and their cleverness to try to make their points and to communicate their needs and desires to you regarding the city where they live and work and play and do business. I'm one of the citizens who gave a lot of time and sat through a lot of meetings and got to meet some new people and took a lot of walks up and down Merriam Drive. During this planning process, it was open, it was transparent, everyone was welcomed to participate, and some did, many did not, and I do resist and resent the implication that there's sleight of hand or subterfuge or mystery involved in this process. It's elected officials trying to do their best in good faith for the people they've been elected to represent in the city they love so much. I would ask my fellow residents and our business owners to keep a couple of things in mind. When I go to the Merriam Community Center, that I love, by the way, I see a mural there representing Merriam of the 1940s. It's not the same city. Or whatever year it is, Billy, I'm sure you can look it up and quote it to me and get me the toenail clippings of the man who painted it. It's a city that doesn't exist anymore. It's a city that changed. It's a city that evolved. It's a city that grew, sometimes purposefully and sometimes happenstantially. The work that we did as a part of this committee was to deliberately look into the future, not to plan a specific future that was exclusive of others, but that was purposefully and strategically inclusive of the kind of city we might be becoming, because we don't know what we're going to be in another 20 years. I got curbs on my street after I moved to Merriam, and I love them. And I like the sidewalk that goes with them. And that was resisted and fought because it was changing the character of our little farm town. We've moved from a farm town where cattle were grazed across the street from the links to a nice first-tier suburb, but now we're really a part of downtown Kansas City. Whether we like to think that or not, we're a quiet neighborhood part of downtown Kansas City, but we're an urban setting with urban people who live urban lives with a suburban and rural flavor. And we must look to the future and craft it for ourselves, or it will crash down upon us and around us, and we'll have to deal with the fallout of not having thought about that future. So I welcome all this participation in the next planning committees that have to take all those walks and sit through those meetings and meet with all those consultants so that together we can build the city where we can all live together. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Leach. Okay, is there anyone else? Please come forward, sir. Name and address for the record.
Gary Garinger, 9931 West 56th Street. Normally I'm muzzled during these council meetings, so. Water 1 is Johnson County, is that correct, Chris? If they repair a water line, they repair the street that goes with it and storm sewer. So the cost would still be on them. We wouldn't benefit anything from the cars deal. A lot of times they like to.
Yeah, please address that, Mr. Mayor.
So Water One, because they have a variety of different aging infrastructure, they don't have, based on our water rates, the ability to repair all of the stuff that needs to be repaired. So what they do is they chase breaks, they chase leaks. They don't do strategic infrastructure updates. So they don't say, I have an 80-year main that runs from this point to this point, let's go replace it like we would do a street. So what they do is they say, if you want this repaired, you tell us when you're going to do the street, and we'll come in there and repair it when you do the street, because it saves them money. If not, we're just going to tear your street up when it breaks, which is what's happened on 67th, Antioch. So this was a convergence of them needing to replace the water line and us redoing the street. So we approached them and said, hey, we're going to redo the street. It'd be great if you guys would redo the water line so you don't come back in 2 months or 2 years after we redo the street and tear the street up because there's a break. So the hope is that by coordinating these two projects, we don't have to mess with Water One again and have steel plates or different colored asphalt for the next 10 years, we hope, 15 years. So hopefully that gives you a little context.
Yeah, thank you. But it doesn't need to be a complete redesign of the streets, which affects the businesses, which has led to other issues like where IKEA is built of eminent domain that we like to use and is a big buzz. So business owners, just turn over your businesses to Merriam. They want to build apartments anyway. That's where the money's at. And the other question I have is, if you do this choking down environment, you got a lot more idle time. You got a lot more oil dripping off of vehicles, pollution, air, all that, by bottlenecking it down when you make traffic not flow quickly. And I thought we were trying to become a more green city. And with that as well, I don't know why it is so important for this arch. That's what it seems to be about. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Geringer. Okay, I'll look out here one more time. All right, any other hands going up? Oh, we got one in the corner. Okay. Please come forward. Name and address for the record.
Christina Stokes, 10218 West 55th Street. I just wanted to say I'm in favor of the proposal. I know I might be in the minority on this in this room, but I know I'm in the majority in the people of the community who have asked for these changes. Oh, that's okay. Thanks, I'm short. I know this proposal is in support, like its goal is to support these businesses, all of the businesses, the past and the ones that are to come, the dreamers and the entrepreneurs, as people love to do with this beautiful space down here. And it supports the wishes of the community to be more pedestrian and bike friendly. I understand the main issue is one of available space, particularly in those first couple blocks north of Johnson Drive. And in some places, we just can't have both a turn lane and parking, and it's just logistics. So anyway, I just wanted to say that I appreciate all of your efforts to try to marry the past with the present and the future as we build it together. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Ms. Stokes. Okay, anyone else out there? Okay, boy, I think we're almost there. Okay, well, we will go ahead and end then public comments at this time. For all 21 of you that spoke, let's keep a little note here. But we do appreciate everybody coming up and speaking, saying what was important to you, and obviously this council does take this very serious. We've been over this project for a number of months, and there's been numerous changes to the plan based on input from each and every one of you. At this point, I will open it up to the council for your thoughts and from discussion itself of kind of where you want to move forward with this. I see Mr. Neal raising his hand. Go ahead.
I actually have a question before anything else. And the question is, in these latest design, two designs that haven't really been shown on the screen yet, could you show the different designs, number one? But number two, why is it necessary to remove the west side parking spaces? What is the rationale behind that, as opposed to having keeping the 3-lane profile, but not having the additional parking on the east side? Can someone explain what the reasoning
I
behind
think we
that is?
certainly could sacrifice are you asking to get rid of the east side parking to maintain the west side parking?
Yeah, I'm asking what the decision, the design choice, how that was made, and why that in the work session that was discussed. And I
Sure,
said
my
at the time,
understanding is that when the last version that the council looked at, in order to chase the 3-lane profile further to the north, that's where the lane existed, was that we had kicked the parking to be angled to the center line of the street. And so to chase that back and maintain all of the additional lanes, that's where the street was.
So, so it's, I'm not sure I understand, but to clarify, so the design, the movement of the road further to the east, the main part of the road further to the east, no, excuse me, to the west, was predicated based on the configuration of the parking closer to the marketplace, that is the angled parking. Is that what you're trying, is that what you're saying?
I'm not sure I understand the question, but the concern that was voiced was the stacking issue. And in order to accommodate the stacking, you had space that was already there in the street that was on-street parking. So when we tapered the street, it put the on-street parking now in what some folks wanted to be that lane for additional stacking. So by removing the parking, you already had the lane there, if that makes sense. So it was simply because it was already there.
Okay, but in the work session, I think I may have asked it, I don't remember, but I did say, I asked about the removal of the west side parking and putting the, extra additional parking on the east side, and whether or not that could be changed. So, and I believe that I said that obviously fixing the stacking problem and leaving the parking on the west side, which makes sense to me for a lot of reasons, including a number of the reasons that were articulated today, I would be in favor of that. And it's disappointing that that wasn't considered as part of the option also, one of the options. So, but it doesn't sound like there's a particular, is there a reason other than that it was like that before and that's less editing on in the software?
It's my understanding that we could maintain the west side parking. That was the next evolution of where we were at.
Okay.
And we added more spots to the east. So we took what was on the west and we replaced it with more parking on the east. We were able to accommodate that because of where 58th Terrace comes in, so we could put parking on both ends of that.
Right, but
we certainly could maintain west side parking, but then we have to get rid of the east side parking. There's
Right.
not enough space.
Right, when there is apparently, parking available on the east side for some of the businesses that are there. That's also been brought up a number of times. But, so I guess, from my standpoint, I think either of the two newer options would be fine from my standpoint if we also could maintain the west side parking.
Understood.
Anyone else would like to make some comments? Okay, yeah, Ms. Chavez, go ahead.
Yeah, specifically about that. So I think what you were trying to say is that because of the angled parking in front of the marketplace, it would cause the street to kind of jog again. Is that kind of what you're saying? So that's why it was aligned. So you're not kind of going twisty-twirly down Merriam Drive?
No, that may be. I'd have to ask the city engineer that. To me, why the evolution of the west parking was, again, that was parking that when we were asked to create more queue space for queuing of cars, that already existed. It was on-street parking. So what we did is we shifted that parking back, and then when the council wanted more queuing, we could just eliminate the on-street parking, which did not allow for queuing if there was cars parked there. So but we were able to maintain that curb line where it was, and that was how that happened. There wasn't anything nefarious about it. It was just that parking already, that pavement already existed.
Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Connell.
Yeah, in all of these plans, the sidewalk on the east side gets noticeably wider.
Correct. I believe so.
And so if you took the parking off the east side, it would basically maintain the current depth of the sidewalk, width of the sidewalk.
Where's my city? Is that? I don't really track that.
I'm not sure I understand.
Yeah, I don't track that.
Well, in all of the plans, the sidewalks got wider.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. So, first of all, I think to make sure, reinforce Chris's answer, the reason why in the latest drawing, there's no on-street parking showing on the west is really just because we were trying to quickly illustrate the concepts discussed. How we had the lanes set up for 3 lanes at Johnson Drive there, we just extended those wherever they had been previously laid out. It just so happens that you couldn't maintain that particular distance from the center of the street and keep on-street parking on the west side, but it stayed on the east. You have the option of picking which side you'd like on-street parking. In terms of the sidewalk width, what came out of the Planning Sustainable Places study, the recommendations, was in fact that they heard the community wanted wider sidewalks. And so the changes that were in those drawings, in fact, tried to accomplish that. Right now, I think the sidewalk on the east side of the street is about 7 feet, and what's proposed would certainly make it wider than that. And on the west side of the street, what was shown was 11.5 feet, where there was no on-street parking.
But if you were to shift the entire street over so you could have parking on the west side, you would still have a 6-foot sidewalk on the east side.
Yes. Yeah, you basically, if 3 lanes of pavement are what you want, so you can have a center turn lane, right, to address stacking, you basically have 24 feet of space to split in some way between the west side of the road and the east side of the road that's going to be sidewalk and or on-street parking. You get to decide how you want your 24 feet, right? Parking, we try and hold out at least 6 feet, right? So that leaves, if you, one side, then you have 18 feet of sidewalk to distribute somehow, 9 feet each side, 10 and 8. That's really what it comes down to.
Can we put the plans on the screen so everyone's looking at this? Like at least the 2 new ones, maybe? I'm visual. I mean, I have it here, but just so everyone else can see what we're kind of referring to. Thank you.
Those 2, which one would you like to see, A or B?
That's the one to Hawker. If you take 3 lanes to Hawker, I see head nods.
Personally, B, but I don't want to
Okay,
speak
B?
for everyone.
All right.
Yeah. Okay, so can I talk for a few more
Yes,
beats?
go ahead. Go ahead, Ms. Ray, go ahead.
No, you're fine, Randy. I have some questions.
Oh, okay.
So, or comments, I guess. So I think this one, if we shifted the on-street parking from the east side to the back to the west side, so we retain those 5 spots on the west side that are currently there, or 4, I can't remember what it's marked as. Then this one, I think, achieves the goals of creating similar or more stacking in the left turn lane and a center lane to Hawker. And then we still are preserving everything north of Hawker that we've already deemed that we like and we agree on. So you're saying we have the choose your own adventure of the width of the sidewalk to play with, so that's doable to remove the east side parking that doesn't exist currently and retain the west side parking. And then this could be our new profile. So we're retaining 3-lane profile from Johnson Drive to Hawker, and that, I know we're getting rid of the right turn lane by doing that, but we're still creating more left turn stacking. Okay.
True.
Make sure I understood everything that's possible. Thank you.
And I'll point out, if we do on-street parking on the west side, basically just as we did it on the east, we may only be able to fit 3 spaces in this way. Before we had 4, right, it wasn't quite the same setup as what we're showing here.
If we move the parking to the west side of the street, we're also limited with the curb cuts where they exist, and trying to squeeze in parking between curb cuts.
Correct.
I don't love having the crosswalk at 3 lanes.
At where? Sorry.
What?
At 3 lanes.
I don't love having that major crosswalk as 3 lanes.
Just north of 58th Terrace.
Yeah, I mean, as we're discussing it, I think a shorter crosswalk would be a lot safer, especially if we were trying to encourage people to use the streets more often, that being one of the major crosswalks that doesn't have a signal or a light. This still maintains the elevated crosswalks, right?
That is what we're showing, yes.
At
You
least
can
at
use-
least for this one at 58th, not necessarily the one closer to Johnson.
Correct. Yeah, 3 lanes about the max. We do a raised crosswalk. I mean, really is an effective, any type of effective measure for pedestrian safety.
Okay. Any other council members have comments you'd like to make? Okay.
Me again.
Ms. Shredder, go ahead.
Can you remind me how raised that crosswalk is, like in terms of, or like what would
Yep.
be a standard?
Essentially, it's raised 6 inches, so it is the same height as the top of curb. It's just at the each edge, we give a place for water that's flowing down the gutter to go if we don't have an inlet right there to grab it. But otherwise, yeah, you just walk across at top of sidewalk. So again, your pedestrians are that much higher visibility moving across.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any other discussions or questions? Okay, Mr. Neal, go ahead.
You know, one of the gentlemen asked about if anybody was a small business owner, and I've been one for 30 years. And your place of business is something that you spend an awful lot of time thinking about, and a lot of time you generally work a whole lot more than 40 hours a week when you have your own business. And changes made to your environment sometimes are beyond your own control. You know, they can be national events, changes in interest rates, things like that can have a major impact on your life. I think as a business owner, I want to not harm our current stakeholders. And the idea, you know, we've gone over this a lot in the last several weeks, and we are all trying to find a solution that meets everybody's needs. And I just think that if, you know, in the various discussions, I've heard things that to me sound a little bit like almost ideology in some respects. There are, you know, the idea that we'd want less traffic for some reason, and that is a design objective. That doesn't, I mean, it makes sense from the standpoint of if that's really going to encourage people to not use and burn fossil fuels. I get that. But the same token, a lot of these design changes have unintended consequences. And so if we're stacking up cars and traffic and they're just sitting there idling, that's not helping at all. So I think this is a road project. Traffic should be our focus. And if we can make some other changes that are helpful and enhance safety, I'm all for it. Moving the parking to the east side when you have a business that does involve people carrying heavy and large items across the street as a result of that change, I don't think is a good idea. And I think we are addressing the stacking problem, you know, with with proposed possible changes. And I hope that we as a council look at the whole picture here, the stakeholders, as well as some of the other goals that individual council members may have. And, you know, I would like to see us pick something, either that one, but moving it and then putting the parking back on the west side, or, you know, possibly if I mean, that's my that would be my preference.
Yes, Chandra, go ahead.
To speak in as clearest terms as I possibly can, with this option, is it possible to just move that first set of parallel lane, like parallel parking lanes that's closest to Johnson Drive, that public parking to the other side of the street, and keep that other set that's north of 58th on that side of the street, and keep that same profile plan right there?
I don't think you would like that if I tried.
Would that make the sidewalks too narrow?
I think you're gonna end up with some very narrow sidewalks or an interesting jog in the
So it's
street.
all or nothing, one side or the other.
It's going to work much better if you pick one side.
Very diplomatic answer.
Well,
And the reason
know-
you picked that side, sorry, I'm gonna put words in your mouth maybe, but the reason you picked that side is because of all the interesting curb cuts on the west side, potentially.
that is certainly something that makes it easier to add parking on the east side. And remember, this project doesn't have one single, only solo answer. This project's all about the city deciding what your priorities are.
One of our priorities was to make it more pedestrian friendly because that's what our residents told us they wanted, was a more pedestrian friendly downtown. Just to reiterate, how we got to this point is we polled our citizens and our citizens told us, make downtown more pedestrian friendly.
And the committee that 4 of us sat on, 5 of us, 6 of us sat on for the last year and a half, before I was an elected official and before Jacob was an elected official, but still, 6 of us on that committee.
And those of us who went to all the meetings.
Other discussion? Other discussion? It sounds like we have several different
guess-
opinions here on the council this evening. Thank you. Thanks, sir. Obviously, we're going to have to, oh, did you have something else you'd like to say, Ms. Ryder? Oh, yes, please. Yeah, please turn on your mic. And
My 2 cents is I don't really care which side the parking's on, and I want 2 lanes at the sidewalk because safety for pedestrians.
Okay. I don't know that was an option, was it?
How's this? How about here's my compromise, if I can be clear and try and pitch some of what I'm hearing, feel free to correct me. We like the idea of the parking on the west side because that's where it is right now. We can manage that to some extent by flipping the parking that we're showing on the east to the west side, realigning the street, basically shifting the street to the east to accommodate additional parking, which still gets us wider sidewalks on both sides. Maybe not a whole lot wider, but wider. Option A brings that 3-lane profile back to, I want to say, just north of the curb cut, where it says comment 7.
You want to see option A?
Yeah, go to option A because I don't know why. I'm not sure what this option really accomplishes. I'd rather see this profile with the 3 lanes brought just south of the crosswalk so that we could shorten it to 2 lanes. This still dramatically increases the amount of queuing that we would have for left turns at Johnson Drive, potentially puts some parking back on the east side as well, cuts the crosswalk to 2 lanes, makes it a lot safer for people who are parking on the east side and wanting to walk to the west side, whether it's to businesses that are right there or for any other event that we have downtown. You know, anybody with limited mobility or carrying a heavy instrument or in a wheelchair or elderly, you know, bringing it to 2 lanes I think is a big priority for me, especially if we're trying to bring people downtown and to use that crosswalk. I would say I like the idea of moving the whole road to the east, putting the parking back on the north side, getting wider sidewalks than what we have right now, and bringing that angled cut just south of the crosswalk.
Just to clarify, you meant west side, right?
Yes, moving the parking that we're showing here.
The north of the paper.
From east
Yes.
to the west. Plan north.
Okay, or I assume an option also would be, Mr. LaHaye, is that, you know, your concern, and rightly so, is to try to get that crosswalk down to 2 lanes, is just to move the crosswalk down further, unless that's some sort of
We have a lot of
street
parking
issue,
that we're
so-
showing right there at 58th Terrace on that side street.
The
that haven't-
existing parking on 58th Terrace, there's 22 spots, Anton, is that correct? that are on 58th Terrace. So we want to keep that crosswalk as
That crosswalk
close to
close to those.
58th Terrace
And
as
I think we
possible.
also want to have traffic calming there, which was
Which
the
is the
dual
raised
purpose of the
crosswalk.
raised crosswalk.
Well, and it seems like we're going to get raised crosswalk. The question is do you cross 3 lanes or 2 lanes? That's what's, and you know, where that ended. And what are we giving up on stacking? How many feet of stacking if, as Mr. LaHaye has proposed, do we lose?
Not give, to this plan, maybe 30 feet, because you're not going to stack over the crosswalk. Cars shouldn't be parked on blocking the crosswalk when they're
Legally.
stacking, legally. And we've all had all sorts of conversations about what's legal downtown and what we let them do anyway.
All right. Go ahead. Mr. Silvers, go ahead.
So just to understand what you're saying, where the street transitions from 2 lanes to 3 lanes, you want to push that farther?
Just south of the crosswalk, so the crosswalk becomes a 2-lane profile. But also pair that with the desire that I'm hearing, I feel like I heard, to move the parking back to the west side of the street by nixing the 2 sections of parking on the east side that are new, that are not currently there, and putting those parking stalls on the west side.
Which is basically just shifting the design to the east.
Yeah, everything moves just a little bit to the east, so it's all a game of give and take.
And the shifting of that 3 lanes, where does that put that in conjunction with that other alley entrance that goes to the back parking lot of Anton's? Is that where that?
It'd be 2 lanes at that alley entrance, and then, but 3 lanes at the garage
So there'd
door
be no
entrance.
turning into that, into his back parking lot? We'd stop traffic to turn left?
Yeah, but now
Yeah,
there's
but-
public parking in front of the store.
Well, but what do you say? People shouldn't be blocking the alleyway. 1, people shouldn't be blocking it. 2, traffic doesn't queue that deep on a regular basis. It's a rare example where parking stacks that deep. The traffic engineer says we don't even need it where we've got it shown, and we've gone an extra 75 feet beyond what the traffic engineering study says.
Yeah, I thought this was one of the plans we'd already discussed, and that was shot down. It sounds like, other than moving the moving the parking from the east side to the west side was never in the last discussion.
No, this is
No,
not
that's
one we
new,
talked
but
about.
everything else is what we spoke about on our January 23rd meeting. That 4 of us voted for.
And 5 voted no. So are we back to that, other than moving the traffic or moving the parking to the west sides to the east side? Is
Can
that
I-
the same plan?
No.
Is it not,
is not
is
the
it
same
not
plan.
this one? The one that was in,
Yeah, the printouts, but
On the
also,
dais?
but coupled with moving the parking to the west side.
right, so it would be whatever number this plan is with moving the parking to the
No, that
west
is
side.
not a numbered plan. That's
That's
Jacob's
Jacob's plan.
proposal.
So Jacob number plan.
Right. It is not one of the numbered ones we have.
Should we just sign a complicated number to it, so it feels
But I want to know, can we put a crosswalk anywhere we want? Doesn't it need to be close to an intersection or something? I thought that was best practices.
Would you like to address that, sir?
You do want to be very thoughtful about where you put your crosswalks for a number of reasons, because you don't want them there when people are not going to use them. But we do need to pay attention to where people would probably be likely to cross and try and pair those things up. Yes, we typically do put them in intersections, because most likely that's right where multiple directions of pedestrians may be coming together, and in this case, crossing the street.
Okay.
I will say, and it's a little tough depending on your point of view, so what is shown here in the dashed lines, right, kind of on the west side, that is what was originally shown at the January 19th. That had been what was originally up for debate, and then we've since modified. So if you're comparing about the differences between these options and what had previously come out of the study and we had been developing plans for, the dashed line is what we previously.
Right. And on the 19th, we didn't address whether we could shift the whole plan to the east. I don't think that was discussed.
I think what I mean, being present for some of the discussions, that was not what people were most interested in.
I know, because they hadn't thought about parking yet. They were just talking about stacking at that meeting.
And when I talk about shifting to the east, trying to answer that question, what in my mind I'm looking at is 2 or 3 feet, no more, because then we'll create issues at the intersection and some other things. And then we'll kind of narrow down the benefits of wider sidewalks on the east side of the street if in fact we're shifting the 3 lanes of traffic any further east than that 2 or 3 feet from what we're showing here in these previous examples.
Do you happen to have the 230119 plan as well?
It's up, isn't it? There we go. And that was what I think was shown in dashed lines on the previous, the later one.
Can't see I can't
I
differentiate
was going to
at
say, I
this
know,
distance.
depending on your eyes and distance. It's the lag here.
Oh, okay. I can see that.
Yeah, part of it is the 23019 plan. I don't think we showed that far north. We were focused more on 58th Terrace
Yeah, we stopped at 58th
to
Terrace.
Johnson.
Yes, I made that one.
Yep.
Okay, so then the plan that we're currently discussing would be the plan that has no number, correct?
Okay. We
With
are?
the possibility of moving the parking to the west. Am I,
Okay, but they do not
But-
have this.
there were some copies out
Or
there.
copies outside.
Okay.
Were there enough? Because I can spare mine if someone wants it. Okay.
No, I didn't mean the public. I meant, do our presenters have this at the ready? I know it was sent to Christopher. I want to know if our engineer has it as well.
I do now.
Yay, thank you. The thing about this plan that I didn't understand and didn't ask about before is I don't know what the red marks are that are on the west side up past the second crosswalk. I don't know what that indicates.
That's the curb cut to get behind Casey Strings.
Oh,
That
okay.
currently exists.
That's the alley?
That's the alley access.
Okay.
Well, I guess maybe I'm still confused in reference to, I thought that was part of the plan was to increase stacking back far enough to make a difference. And
we
then
did
also-
increase stacking.
Excuse me, can I speak? I won't cut you off if you don't cut me off. All right. It was that to try to get extra turn space at third lane into the parking space behind Anton's to allow individuals to be able to turn and not be blocking traffic on Merriam Drive to access to the back of that parking lot. This does not do that. This is that correct?
Was that a question?
That's correct. I mean, you're saying this red spot is where the curb cut is to go into that alleyway?
Yeah.
That's correct.
Yes, that's the curb cut behind Casey Strings.
And it would be moved to 2 lanes at that point.
Point of clarification, are you talking about traffic that is going northbound?
Yes, I'm
Yeah.
talking northbound and to be able to get out of the northbound lane.
Right.
To be able to turn left.
Correct,
To go
yeah.
west into that back parking lot. I thought that's where we were at last. I thought that was the main concern itself as to why the last plan was
I mean,
voted down.
I guess I'm
was
confused.
because of that.
Sorry, I thought I was answering a question you asked.
Okay, well, I thought you already did. You answered. You said that was his curb cut, was this red spot, right?
Yeah, because, I mean, what does having 3 lanes directly at that curb cut do? We're getting what, maybe an extra car's worth of stacking at that location? If a car going northbound has to make a left turn at that alleyway, how many extra cars of stacking are we talking are going to be able to achieve by
Right.
putting the curb cut there, as shown on the screen?
Where it stops all traffic going northbound if they're waiting to turn left.
Yeah, but what would be preventing a car from turning left at the alley?
There's no left, middle, left turn lane. They're gonna be able to do it, but they're gonna back up traffic.
Southbound traffic.
They're gonna back up traffic, trying to wait till they can make a left turn.
I thought the fear was that cars would be queued to make a left turn going southbound. I thought that was the goal that we were trying to achieve.
I thought the goal was both.
Yeah.
Personally, I thought we were trying to increase the stacking going southbound to allow more stacking of vehicles there, plus as adding the third lane further back to the north.
This plan doesn't have the center turn lane here. Is that a center turn lane? Is that what it's not striped as?
That's what they call it. That's what they call it.
Is it?
This is shown for southbound left turns. Right, that's the way we striped it, because that's what came out of the previous city council meeting as the
stacking.
real major concern.
Right.
Was for southbound left turns to queue up at the light with the railroad,
But-
train, things like that.
For clarification, again, though, that one does extend the middle lane back past the second curb cut for the west side businesses. Is that correct? This one that we're looking at right here, as opposed to this one here that you just got handed,
Right.
which would not have that center lane all the way extended back to that access point.
This option A does show a center turn lane going farther north than this option. That's
Okay,
true.
so that is a center turn lane for traffic going either north or south between the crosswalk and where the curb goes to 2 lanes. Is that what, the option on the screen, between the crosswalk and north to where we cut down to 2 lanes, what is that center lane for? Is it left turn for southbound traffic? Is it center turn lane for both north and southbound traffic? Yes, both?
For this option, this layout was created with the intent that that's available for southbound left turning cars if there's a long delay at the light at Johnson Drive. Could it, if there's nobody stacked there, can it function as a left turn lane for northbound wanting to turn left, to get into the parking lot behind? Sure.
Not a whole lot of room for cars to
It's
get
not.
southbound around them.
Yeah, and you're right next to a crosswalk, which nobody likes. Absolutely correct. A lot of the debate was over providing enough space for those special times when lots of cars get stuck waiting southbound left. Now, the beautiful thing about center turn lanes, it just creates the option, right? If we stripe them both, what we call twiddles, which is 2-way left turns, northbound, southbound. If we stripe it that way, either direction can use that space to make a left and get out of the way of through traffic. In this particular situation, we don't have a lot of room to paint that before we're narrowing down to 2 lanes. So to be honest, we probably wouldn't paint it that way. You'd have some physical space that might give people options they didn't otherwise have. Doesn't mean we want to encourage it as a regular behavior. And then option B was really to maximize as much as you could how much stacking you'd have available for southbound left on those particularly intense times when they have to wait and still give room for southbound through, southbound right to go around them safely.
Mr. Silvers, go ahead.
So I think what we're all struggling with is there's 3 objectives that we want to meet tonight that we've all kind of discussed. Possibly moving the parking to the west side, the safety of pedestrians crossing the street with instruments, so they would have parking on the west side. They would also, if we shifted the street as it appears here in this, pedestrians would only have to walk across 2 lanes of traffic instead of 3. But the third item then becomes difficult, which is turning left into Anton's business. I don't think we can meet all those objectives. So I think we have to decide which are the most important. And from what we've heard from the majority of the business owners, parking on the west side and safety of the pedestrians crossing the street was highest priority. And if we can come up with a design which seems to be very similar to this one, but parking on the west side, I think we've achieved 2 of those 3 goals.
Mr. Neal, go ahead.
Respectfully, I'm not sure that's what I heard. I heard that the traffic flow was very important to the business owners. And safety is important, obviously, to us. If we use this the one that's not up here, you're also going to have people trying to turn left that are going northbound, and they're going to be possibly in the crosswalk or darn near it. It would seem to me that the trade-off would be to have the three-lane crosswalk and better traffic flow and the parking on the other side. I think you can accomplish all of them to a degree. None of them are going to be perfect, but they're going to be, it's an acceptable compromise. We still have the raised crosswalk, which is going to be helpful. And I don't know, I just feel like I don't know, maybe we should ask them.
Well, I think, David, to your point, I see where you're coming from, right? But when I compare the two, the location of the crosswalk in comparison to the alley, that's like an issue regardless for a left turn, right? Like turning left in the proximity to the crosswalk, that seems like an issue regardless.
It could be.
So the design accomplishes giving far more room for stacking than we originally had. It has the potential to bring public parking over back to where it currently sits. It allows us to have a safer crosswalk with the 2-lane crosswalk, and we still get to keep the wider sidewalks that we want for pedestrian safety, which was one of the significant goals of the project, was to have more pedestrian-friendly downtown.
Well, I think that there's 2 different situations here. One is the stacking situation, and the other is just the normal, when there's moving traffic southbound and cars need to make a left turn, and there's only 1 lane, and it stops all of the northbound traffic. You know, I think there's, you know, I don't know. Drivers, what are they going to do? They're going to get impatient. They're going to, you know, and it's right near the crosswalk. I'm not so sure that that's just the goal of having 2 lanes versus 3 is necessary, in this particular case, is necessarily that much safer.
Ms. Hands, go ahead.
But David, if they want to use the parking in front of Casey Strings, they're going to have to turn left as well, which means they're going to stop traffic. So I'm not saying that this is going to make it worse. If they're headed north and they're going to Casey Strings and they want to park in front,
They would have to make a U-turn.
aren't they going to have to do a left
I would think
somewhere?
that most of the traffic that's heading south would probably turn into the back parking. I don't know.
That's what I'm saying. It seems like you're arguing both sides of that.
Yeah, I
one.
was going to say, as we heard from multiple people tonight, the parking out front is crucial for the people who are going into the store. So I think what Jason said, we're all trying to prioritize compromises here.
I agree. We are all trying to do that.
I think Amy had something that I had a comment to.
Okay,
David.
go ahead, Amy, or Ms. Ryder, sorry.
If we had 2 lanes after north of the crosswalk, anyone who's attempting to turn left into the west parking spots in the backs has only one person to get out of the way. It's not difficult for one vehicle to move out of the way so they can cross. Therefore, I don't think that it's going to block traffic northbound. That's my opinion. Also, I think that having it 2 lanes there, instead of having that weird move, like slight turn to the right in order to get around that center lane, the southbound traffic is going to be angled away from that northbound traffic and won't be able to see it as they come up, and they won't be able to back up out of the way. Whereas if it's 2 lanes, they will be able to see the oncoming traffic and back up, move forward, whatever they need to do, get out of the way. That's my opinion as a driver.
Thank you, Ms. Ryder.
What bothers me about this plan is if a northbound car needs to turn into the lot behind KC Strings, the place where they're going to stop is in that what is presumably center lane at the alley, and an oncoming southbound car is going to have a very narrow window to get around them. Because if a car is parked north of the crosswalk and as close as they can to the curb, to the alley cut, the car's going to take a hard right to zig around them. And I wouldn't be surprised if we don't get a few head-on collisions from a car waiting to make a left turn there going northbound. Because there's not enough room for a car between the crosswalk and the alley.
Yes, go ahead, Ms. Ryder.
In addition to that, anyone attempting to turn left in the northbound attempting to turn left and avoid the crosswalk and get into that tiny space right before the alleyway is going to more than likely end up halfway, like crossways through both lanes anyway, and block both lanes going north and south. It's just a very small and awkward space.
Yeah, I agree with that. Ms. Ryder, go ahead.
Thank you. One point is, I mean, I drive Merriam Drive almost every day, and when I've experienced traffic there, it's mostly going southbound, and I don't necessarily notice a lot of stacking going northbound. In my limited, I understand I'm not a business owner down there, but in my experience as a driver down there, so that would also be just adding to where I think it would be fine to have the 2-lane profile past the crosswalk. I'm sorry, north of the crosswalk.
Any other discussion? Yeah, Mr. Silvers.
I just want to point out one more benefit of moving the transition north of this crosswalk, which is people exiting Anton's business. They'll be more visible when they're pulling out and wanting to turn left or right. Of course, they will be obstructing the sidewalk, but for the short amount of time it'll take them to turn out of there. But currently, I think they are somewhat obscured by the buildings, and this will allow them to nose out far enough that people can see them and hopefully give way.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion?
I just wanted to say thank you. I know we prepared a lot of these at the last minute, and we got a lot of options that we collectively specifically asked for. So I did want to thank you for putting these exhibits together.
In a short time.
In such a short time.
Yeah. Okay, are we winding down for discussion?
I think the option as presented, the third option that is in the handout, that moves that angle cut to the south, shortens the crosswalk, but also moves the parking back to the west side instead of the east side, seems to satisfy the desire of most people. That's what I would be comfortable putting forward as a motion. Is that, does anybody have any strong objections to that as a path forward, or any alternatives that they want to talk about?
Ms. Rivera, I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Sorry, Chris. Do we have to actually make a motion to
Yeah,
push this
I think
forward,
he's
Chris?
just kind of trying to get a head
No,
nod.
I'm looking for head nods to see,
Yes,
does
I
that
understand.
seem to satisfy most people's desire as a compromise for as many things as we can compromise on?
Okay, hold on a second. Are you referring to 230227A?
No, I was talking about the one that was printed.
But moving the
But moving the
parking
parking.
to the west side.
Quick question on that, though, because of the way the curb cuts go, right? The parking north of 58th Terrace, how does that get moved to the west side, or does that stay?
I'm sure we'd have to squeeze it in between the alley for Anton's and the curb cut to the north, and then what we have for the garage at Anton's and the curb cut to the south.
So we can't, I don't think we can do that, like on the crosswalk or whatever, so does that parking just have to go away and we don't gain any parallel parking in front of Blondie's?
That's the
Or
way
the
I
salon.
understood it when Randy was speaking about it earlier. But
Yeah, it's either all the parking moves or none of it. Ideally, it would be the best possible solution to move it all or none of it.
It simplifies things. If you pick one side, it would be very tricky with the council members' layout, that west side parking south of 58 Terrace and keep that on the north and have any meaningful sidewalk on the side.
Okay. Okay, just for the record, that will be disappointing to some businesses north of 58th Street, but just putting that out there. But I head nod to your question.
Okay. Any other discussion before I entertain a motion?
So
Okay.
that I'm clear, we are talking about eliminating all east side parking, reinstituting the west side parking with the profile that goes from 2 lanes to 3 lanes just south of just south of the north end of 58th Terrace. That is what the motion, I assume, is getting ready to be made.
I have a question.
Mr. Neal, go
I
ahead.
have a question for the engineer. The document that you just got handed, obviously it's not, it's probably not something you've looked at for a long period of time. What is your opinion of that position for the expansion into 3 lanes, along with moving the parking, on-street parking back to the west side? Is that, we haven't seen that drawing, so what is your opinion on the feasibility of that?
So what has been distributed tonight is actually very similar to what originally came out of the PSP study. We were progressing to 95, 98% completion plans. The only difference is we shift back the point at which we actually narrow down to 2 lanes, right, to the north side of 58th Terrace. We adjust some of the on-street parking, but that is substantially, right, you're keeping most parts of what came out of the PSP through that process, and we were progressing with design. So, right, this is not a dramatic change. It provides some additional room for stacking for southbound left-turning vehicles, which I know was a concern. This probably provides an extra 100 feet of stacking over what was originally in the design plans. So that's 4 or 5 cars, depending on how comfortable you are spacing vehicles. So those are the main differences. The on-street parking is what we're gonna have to work out from a pure design perspective, how all this fits into the existing terrain, the businesses, things like that.
You have a question?
Well, no, I just have another comment. I mean, my sense is that, obviously I would like to see option B or A, but B preferably. But it doesn't look like that there's a lot of other support for that. But again, I still think B would be the better option, moving the the parking, on-street parking back to the west side.
Okay. I think everybody's had a chance to speak. Obviously, it's a matter of stacking, whether it is going to be enough, I guess time will tell. And it's will of the council. I would entertain a motion, Mr. Leahy.
I move that we move forward with the design similar to but different from the option shown 230227-A with the changes that the 3-lane profile begin south of the crosswalk that is north of 58th Terrace, so that the street profile from 58th Terrace to Johnson is 3 lanes, and the street profile from the crosswalk north to Hawker is 2 lanes, and we shift the on-street parallel parking from the east side to the west side where we can accommodate it between existing curb cuts. Clear?
Is it clear enough,
Clear.
Mr. Engel?
Clear?
I'm happy to second that.
Okay, we have a motion. You're good with your motion? Okay. And we have a second. Ms. Hands, I think, raised her hand first.
If I could, before the vote, just for clarification, is this to approve and this is what we're moving forward with, or we doing this and bringing this back and doing this all over again?
This motion would be to move forward with it as described.
Like, we
and
will
vote
share
on-
it with council, but
we will draw it, but this is to start the project to draw to send to bid for not just Johnson to Hawker, but Johnson to north of
project.
55th.
just to be clear.
Stacy, does that answer your question? You had your hand up. Okay, that's my intent. Is that it? This is it.
I think, yeah, I think.
I
we've beat
second
this
it
to-
again.
Okay.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, Madam Clerk.
Councilmember Leahy.
Aye.
Councilmember Neal.
I don't think this is the best option, but I'll go ahead and vote yes.
Councilmember Ryder.
Aye.
Councilmember Silvers.
Aye.
Councilmember Yodridge.
Aye.
Councilmember Shavetta.
Aye.
Councilmember Hands.
Aye.
Councilmember Caldwell.
Aye.
Motion passes 8-0.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. For those in the audience, we appreciate sitting through this evening and for all the input that you've given us. And hopefully, we've developed a plan that meets, hopefully, a compromise of most of the people's concerns. Okay, well, let's move on to the next item, and that seems to be Staff Items Monthly Finance Report. Director Oliver?
Good evening. Your January finance report was in your packet. We submitted to you to propose any goals, and several of you have for the upcoming budget session, and we'll be wordsmithing those and putting those together and getting back with you, and hopefully at the next city council meeting, we can adopt those. And we're just really working on getting 2022 closed out and moving towards the audit. So I would be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions for Director Oliver?
Okay, thank you.
Keep that money coming in? Okay. All right, Community Development Update. Looks like we got Director Dyer.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. Brian Dyer, Community Development Director. Just a quick update on Merriam Grand Station. That project continues to go along as scheduled and on pace. A little interesting trivia. All that dirt work you see over there, that is all on-site dirt. They've yet to truck in. They've brought in a little bit, but the majority of it is on-site work, the dirt that they've just been moving around. They found a lot of rock, which they anticipated, and they've chipped, hammer hoed that rock out, been grinding it up and putting it back in the hole. So there will be fill coming in. Really, that's going to be mostly, a lot of it's going to be backfill and things like that when foundations get placed. But just a little bit of trivia that there's not been much dirt in there yet, but there will be at some point in time. Also, along with Merriam Grand Station, we continue to work with Evergy and the developer in regards to the overall energy plan for that on the electrical side of things, and undergrounding and what areas and who's paying for what. So we continue to work through that. So again, as we talked about, spring is when we hope to be bringing forth an agreement between the city for the city council to consider between Merriam and Evergy for that work. And then lastly, we also are working with the developer, their design engineer, Olson, in regards to the intersection improvements that are going to be required for IKEA Way, EB, and Shawnee Mission Parkway. Those intersection improvements in Shawnee Mission Parkway is part of the KDOT system, has to be approved by Kansas Department of Transportation. So they've sent us plans, they being Olson Engineering, the Merriam Grand Station engineer. We reviewed them, sent them back comments. And so we're getting to a point where we'll hopefully be able to submit those to KDOT here very soon. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that council may have.
Any questions for Dr. Dyer?
Real quickly.
Ms. Hands, go ahead.
Just because I was on Advent Health campus this afternoon. I saw the big crane, but I have seen it several times. I've not seen it working for the new cancer
Yeah,
facility.
they have, they're working over there. They have everything they need. And I know the last I talked to building inspector, they have been, for the cancer center, they've gotten the foundation in, the footing foundation in there and doing the underground, the under slab utility works for that building, so.
Okay. Any other questions for Dr. Dyer? I see none. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, well, it takes us down to Mr. Engel. We got anything from staff?
I don't have anything for you. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Engel? I see no questions for Mr. Engel. Well, we have no executive session. Okay. So I would entertain a motion for adjournment. Mr. Silvers, get your hand up pretty quick.
I move that we adjourn.
Okay, and Ms. Shadrich.
Mr. Mayor, second.
Madam Clerk.
All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting's adjourned.